Sarah Martinez wiped the sweat from her forehead as she finished organizing the last shipment of medical supplies in the base warehouse. The desert sun was beginning to set over forward operating base Phoenix, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. For 6 months, she had worked as a civilian contractor, managing supply logistics for the remote military outpost. It was not the life she had planned. But after losing her job as a hospital administrator back home, this assignment had offered good pay and a chance to support the troops overseas. At 28, Sarah had never imagined she would find herself in such a place. The base was located in a contested region where tensions ran high, but she had been assured by her supervisors that civilians were kept safe behind multiple layers of security. Her daily routine involved tracking inventory, coordinating deliveries, and ensuring that medical supplies reached the field hospital on time. The soldiers treated her with respect, and many had become like family during her time there. Sarah had grown up in a small town in Colorado, where her father had taught her to hunt and shoot when she was young. Those skills seemed like distant memories now, buried under years of office work and city living. Her father, a Vietnam veteran, had always emphasized the importance of being prepared, though she never thought she would need those lessons here. The closest she came to weapons on the base was occasionally seeing the guards at their posts. The base housed about 200 personnel, including soldiers, medics, engineers, and a small group of civilian contractors like herself. It served as a critical supply hub for operations in the surrounding area. Despite being in a conflict zone, daily life had settled into a comfortable routine. Sarah shared her quarters with Maya Chen, a communications specialist, and they had become close friends. Maya often joked that Sarah was too organized for her own good, color-coding everything, and maintaining detailed spreadsheets that would make accountants weep with joy. That evening, as Sarah locked up the warehouse, she noticed increased activity around the base perimeter. More guards were posted than usual, and she could see soldiers checking equipment with unusual urgency. When she asked Sergeant Williams, who often helped her with heavy deliveries, about the heightened security, he just shrugged and mentioned something about increased chatter on enemy communications. Sarah thought little of it, assuming it was just another precautionary measure. After dinner in the mess hall, Sarah spent time with Maya and some of the other contractors playing cards and sharing stories from home. Dr. Rebecca Thompson, the head of the medical unit, joined them for a few hands of poker. The doctor had taken Sarah under her wing, appreciating her efficiency in managing medical supplies. They often discussed the challenges of working in such an environment and the importance of their support role for the combat troops. As the evening wound down, Sarah returned to her quarters and video called her family back home. Her mother worried constantly about her safety, while her younger brother Jake seemed fascinated by her stories of military life. During the call, her father reminded her to stay alert and trust her instincts, advice she had heard countless times growing up. He had always taught her and Jake to be self-reliant and prepared for unexpected situations. That night, Sarah lay in her narrow cot, listening to the familiar sounds of the base settling down for the night. Generator hums, distant conversations, and the occasional vehicle passing by had become her lullaby. She thought about her life back home, wondering if she would return to hospital work or perhaps find something new after her contract ended. The money she was earning would help her start fresh, maybe even pursue the nursing degree she had always wanted. Around midnight, Sarah was awakened by what sounded like distant thunder. But the sky had been clear. She sat up in bed, straining to listen. Maya was already awake, reaching for her radio with a concerned expression. More sounds followed. Definitely not thunder. The sharp crack of weapons fire echoed across the desert, still far away but clearly moving closer. Emergency lights began flashing outside their window, and the base alarm system activated with its piercing wail. Maya jumped up, throwing on her uniform. Her training kicked in as she tried to establish communication with the command center. Sarah felt her heart racing as she dressed quickly, her mind struggling to process what was happening. This was supposed to be a secure base, surrounded by friendly forces. The sounds of gunfire were getting closer, and she could hear shouting from outside their building. The emergency speaker system crackled to life with a terse announcement from the base commander. An enemy force had breached the outer perimeter and was advancing toward the main compound. All personnel were ordered to report to designated secure areas immediately. Civilians were directed to the reinforced bunker beneath the administrative building. Sarah grabbed her ID and the small bag she had been told to prepare for emergencies, though she had never expected to need it. As they rushed outside, Sarah could see muzzle flashes in the distance and tracer rounds streaking across the night sky. The organized calm of the base had transformed into controlled chaos as soldiers moved to defensive positions. She felt completely out of place among the military personnel who seemed to know exactly what to do. This was their world, not hers. She was just someone who managed spreadsheets and tracked medical supplies. The bunker was already crowded with other civilian contractors and some of the medical staff when Sarah and Maya arrived. Dr. Thompson was there, having been pulled away from the field hospital when the attack began. The concrete walls muffled most of the sound from outside, but the vibrations from explosions could still be felt. Sarah found herself thinking about her father's stories from Vietnam and wondering if this was what he had experienced as a young soldier. The bunker shook as another explosion rocked the base above them. Sarah sat, pressed against the cold concrete wall, watching the faces around her. Some of the newer contractors looked terrified, while Dr. Thompson remained calm, checking her medical bag and preparing for potential casualties. The emergency lighting cast strange shadows that made everything feel surreal. Maya had managed to establish radio contact with the command post and was relaying updates to the group huddled in the underground shelter. According to the reports crackling through Maya's radio, a large enemy force had launched a coordinated assault on multiple positions around the base. The outer defenses had held longer than expected, but the attackers had superior numbers and were using the cover of darkness effectively. Sarah could hear the stress in the voices of the soldiers coordinating the defense, their usual calm professionalism strained by the intensity of the situation. After what felt like hours but was probably only 30 minutes, the sounds of battle seemed to shift location. Dr. Thompson received an urgent message through Maya's radio. The field hospital had taken a direct hit, and wounded soldiers needed immediate evacuation to the bunker's medical station. Despite the ongoing attack, she would need to leave the safety of the shelter to help coordinate emergency medical care. Sarah volunteered to help Dr. Thompson, surprising herself with the decision. Her months of managing medical supplies had given her basic knowledge of emergency equipment, and she felt useless hiding in the bunker while others risked their lives. Against the protests of some of the other civilians, she followed the doctor through the reinforced exit that led to the medical facility adjacent to the bunker system. The scene outside was chaos. Smoke filled the air, and the acrid smell of burning fuel and gunpowder made her eyes water. Emergency vehicles raced between buildings, while medics carried wounded soldiers on stretchers. Sarah had seen military exercises before, but this was horrifyingly real. Blood stained the sandy ground, and the organized efficiency of the base had been replaced by desperate urgency. In the makeshift medical area, Sarah found herself working alongside combat medics and nurses, helping to organize supplies and assist with triage. Her organizational skills proved valuable as wounded soldiers were brought in faster than the medical staff could initially process them. She helped catalog injuries, tracked blood supplies, and ensured that critical equipment was available where needed. The training her father had insisted on, including basic first aid certification, became unexpectedly relevant. Dr. Thompson worked with surgical precision, directing the medical team and making life or death decisions. Sarah watched her move between patients, stabilizing the most critical cases and preparing them for evacuation to better facilities. The doctor's composure under pressure reminded Sarah of her father during emergencies, that same focused calm that came from experience and training. The building shook again as enemy fire struck nearby structures. Through the small windows, Sarah could see muzzle flashes getting closer to their position. The defensive perimeter was clearly being pushed back, and the sounds of battle were moving toward the base's central areas. A young soldier rushed in with news that the enemy had breached the inner defense line and was advancing toward the administrative complex. Sergeant Williams appeared in the medical area, his uniform torn and his arm bleeding from shrapnel wounds. He quickly briefed Dr. Thompson on the tactical situation, while Sarah cleaned and bandaged his injury. The enemy force was larger and better equipped than intelligence had suggested. Communications with higher command had been disrupted, and the base was essentially cut off from outside support. The defenders were doing their best, but they were outnumbered and running low on ammunition. As Sergeant Williams prepared to return to the fight, he noticed Sarah's competence with the medical procedures and asked about her background. When she mentioned her shooting experience from growing up in Colorado, he paused thoughtfully. The base was critically short on personnel who could handle weapons, as several soldiers had been wounded in the initial attack. He suggested that Dr. Thompson might need armed protection if the enemy continued to advance. Dr. Thompson overheard the conversation and made a decision that would change everything. She asked Sarah if she would be willing to help defend the medical area if necessary. The wounded soldiers could not be moved safely, and the medical staff needed protection to continue their work. Sarah felt her heart pounding as she realized what was being asked of her. This was far beyond anything she had imagined when she took the contractor position. Despite her fear, Sarah agreed to help. Sergeant Williams quickly provided her with body armor and a rifle, along with rapid instructions on its operation. The weapon felt familiar in her hands, muscle memory returning from countless hunting trips with her father. He had always emphasized safety and accuracy, lessons that felt crucial now. Williams showed her defensive positions around the medical facility and explained basic tactical concepts for protecting the building. The enemy breakthrough came sooner than expected. Sarah was checking ammunition supplies when she heard Maya's voice on the radio reporting hostile forces approaching the medical complex. Through the window, she could see figures moving between the buildings in the darkness, their movements clearly coordinated and purposeful. These were not random raiders but trained fighters who knew what they were doing. Dr. Thompson continued working on a critically injured soldier, while Sarah took position near the main entrance. Her hands trembled as she checked the rifle's safety and sight alignment, remembering her father's voice telling her to breathe steadily and focus on the target. The approaching enemy soldiers had no idea that a civilian contractor was about to become their biggest problem. The first hostile fighter appeared around the corner of a nearby building, moving cautiously toward the medical facility. Sarah watched him through the window, noting his equipment and the way he signaled to others behind him. These were clearly professional soldiers, not untrained insurgents. They moved with discipline and purpose, making their advance more dangerous than a disorganized attack would have been. Sarah's training from years of deer hunting with her father suddenly felt inadequate for the situation she faced. Those had been calm mornings in the Colorado mountains, not life-or-death combat in a desert war zone. But the fundamentals were the same: steady breathing, proper sight alignment, and smooth trigger control. She positioned herself carefully, using the window frame for support, while staying back far enough to avoid being seen from outside. The enemy soldier advanced closer to the building, unaware that he was being watched. Sarah could see his face now, focused and determined. In that moment, she realized that everything had changed. She was no longer just a civilian contractor managing supply logistics. She had become part of the defense of the base, responsible for protecting the wounded soldiers and medical staff who depended on her courage and skill. Sarah steadied her breathing as the enemy soldier approached the medical facility. Her father's voice echoed in her memory, reminding her to exhale slowly and squeeze the trigger smoothly. The rifle felt solid in her hands as she lined up the shot through the window. Time seemed to slow down as she made the decision that would define the rest of the night. The soldier was 20 meters away when she fired. The shot was clean and precise. The enemy fighter dropped immediately, his weapon clattering across the ground. Sarah felt a surge of adrenaline mixed with shock at what she had just done. There was no time to process the emotional impact as more hostile figures emerged from behind buildings and vehicles. Her actions had revealed her position, but they had also eliminated an immediate threat to the wounded soldiers inside. Dr. Thompson looked up from her patient briefly, nodding with grim approval before returning to her surgical work. The medical staff continued their life-saving efforts, while Sarah repositioned herself to cover different angles of approach. She could hear Maya on the radio, reporting the enemy contact and requesting support, but the defending forces were stretched thin across the entire base perimeter. The second enemy fighter tried to use the darkness and smoke for concealment, but Sarah's hunting experience had taught her to watch for movement and unusual shapes. She spotted him attempting to flank the building through a damaged section of perimeter fence. Her second shot was equally effective, dropping the attacker before he could reach an advantageous position. The rifle's operation was becoming natural again, her body remembering skills learned during countless hours of target practice in the mountains. More enemy soldiers appeared, apparently drawn by the gunfire from the medical facility. Sarah realized that her defensive actions had made the building a target, but retreating would leave the wounded soldiers and medical staff completely vulnerable. She moved between different windows, using her knowledge of the building's layout to create multiple firing positions and avoid being pinned down by return fire. The next engagement was more intense. 3 enemy fighters approached simultaneously from different directions, forcing Sarah to prioritize targets based on their proximity to the building and the immediate threat they posed. Her first shot eliminated the closest attacker, but the other 2 began suppressing fire that shattered windows and sent concrete chips flying. Sarah dropped low and moved to a different position, using the building's structure for protection. From her new angle, she could see one of the remaining attackers trying to breach the side entrance where medical supplies were stored. If he succeeded in entering the building, the consequences would be catastrophic for everyone inside. Sarah took careful aim, despite the stress of incoming rounds, and fired. The shot was slightly off-center but still effective, stopping the immediate breach attempt and forcing the remaining enemy fighter to seek cover. The lone surviving attacker from this group proved to be more skilled than the others. He used suppressive fire effectively and moved tactically between cover positions, clearly trying to work his way closer to the building. Sarah found herself in a deadly game of patience and precision, waiting for him to expose himself while avoiding his attempts to locate her exact position within the building. When he finally made his move, Sarah was ready. Years of waiting motionlessly for deer to emerge from forest cover had taught her the value of patience and observation. Her shot caught the enemy soldier as he sprinted between cover positions, ending the immediate threat to the medical facility. The sudden silence that followed felt almost as intense as the gunfire had been. Maya's voice on the radio brought news that enemy forces had been spotted regrouping for another assault on the administrative complex. Sarah realized that defending the medical facility was only part of a larger battle for control of the base. She could see wounded soldiers being brought in continuously, and Dr. Thompson's team was working at maximum capacity to save lives. The second wave of attackers approached with better coordination and heavier weapons. Sarah counted at least 6 enemy fighters moving toward her position, supported by what appeared to be machine gun fire from a distant position. The situation was becoming desperate, but abandoning the medical facility was not an option. Too many wounded soldiers depended on the continued operation of the emergency treatment center. Sarah used her ammunition more selectively now, focusing on the most dangerous targets and conserving rounds for critical moments. Her hunting background had taught her to make every shot count, and that discipline proved crucial as the enemy pressure intensified. She eliminated 2 more attackers who attempted to approach the main entrance, their bodies serving as a deterrent to others who might try the same route. The machine gun position proved to be a serious problem, as its fire kept Sarah pinned down and prevented her from engaging other targets effectively. She studied the muzzle flashes and sound patterns, trying to determine the weapon's exact location. Using techniques her father had taught her for stalking game, she waited for a pause in the firing and quickly moved to a window with a better angle on the distant position. The shot across that distance was the most challenging she had ever attempted under combat conditions. Wind, darkness, and stress all worked against accuracy, but Sarah controlled her breathing and used her best judgment on bullet trajectory. The machine gun fire stopped abruptly after her shot, though she could not confirm the exact result from her position. With the supporting fire eliminated, the remaining enemy fighters found themselves exposed and vulnerable. Sarah systematically engaged each target, her accuracy remaining consistent despite fatigue and stress. The organizational skills that had made her effective at logistics work translated surprisingly well to tracking multiple threats and prioritizing responses based on immediate danger levels. As dawn approached, the sounds of battle across the base began to diminish. Maya reported through her radio communications that friendly reinforcements had arrived and were pushing back the remaining enemy forces. The attack on forward operating base Phoenix had failed, largely due to the determined resistance of defenders like Sarah, who had refused to allow critical positions to fall. Dr. Thompson emerged from treating her latest patient and looked around the medical facility with amazement. Despite hours of intense combat just outside the building, the medical operations had continued without interruption. The wounded soldiers had received the care they needed, and additional lives had been saved because the facility remained operational throughout the attack. Sergeant Williams returned as the base secured its perimeter, his expression showing both relief and profound respect when he learned what Sarah had accomplished. The enemy body count around the medical facility told a story of exceptional marksmanship and tactical awareness. 20 confirmed eliminations by a civilian contractor who had started the evening organizing medical supplies seemed almost impossible to believe. Sarah sat quietly as the immediate danger passed, finally processing the magnitude of what had occurred. She had killed 20 enemy fighters in defense of the base, transforming from a logistics coordinator into one of the most effective defenders of the entire engagement. The rifle felt strange in her hands now, no longer a familiar tool but a reminder of how completely her life had changed in a single night. The base commander personally thanked Sarah for her actions, noting that her defense of the medical facility had been crucial to the overall success of the base's resistance. Many wounded soldiers owed their lives not only to the medical staff who treated them but also to the civilian contractor who had ensured that treatment could continue under fire. When Sarah finally called her family to report that she was safe, she struggled to find words that could adequately describe the experience. Her father listened quietly to her brief account, then simply said that he was proud of how she had used the skills he had taught her. Her mother cried with relief, while Jake asked questions about the tactical details that Sarah was not yet ready to discuss. In the days that followed, Sarah returned to her logistics duties, but everything felt different now. The other contractors looked at her with a mixture of respect and uncertainty, unsure how to relate to someone who had proven so deadly in combat. The soldiers treated her as one of their own, acknowledging that she had earned her place among the base's defenders through her actions under fire. Sarah knew that she would eventually return to civilian life, but the person who would leave forward operating base Phoenix would be fundamentally different from the one who had arrived 6 months earlier. She had discovered capabilities within herself that she never knew existed, and the experience had changed her understanding of courage, duty, and what it meant to protect others when everything was on the line.